2020 has provided utilities around the country a series of compounding crises. COVID-19 has made it more challenging to deal with outages, hurricanes, fires, and a host of other emergencies. The utilities that have had the most success navigating this landscape have focused on customer experience to connect, communicate, and engage their customers with important information. These efforts have led to an increase in satisfaction for many utilities. However, there's still much work to be done. Digital technology, data, and analytics offer utilities new opportunities and insights to become more customer-centric. Hello and welcome to Zpryme Now. I'm Chris Moyer. Thank you so much for joining us today as we discuss customer experience. And I am so pleased to be joined by two experts in utility customer experience. Jendi Birchfield is the head of customer experience for Southern California Edison. Jendi, good morning. Welcome to you.
Thanks for inviting me.
And it's our pleasure. And we are also joined by Ann Bowie, a director at Black & Veatch Management Consulting. Ann, welcome to you as well.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you.
Well, we are so fortunate to be speaking with both of you, and we are so grateful to all of our audience here at Zpryme. Over the next hour, we're going to be having a lively and engaging discussion, so we strongly encourage you to ask questions of our panelists, and we will do our best to answer those questions during this presentation. As always, Zpryme webinars will be available within a couple days of the recording. So if you have any colleagues who were not able to make this time but are interested in customer experience, there will be a link on our website and playback instructions for free on-demand viewing of this webinar. So we encourage you to share this widely. Again, please feel free to ask questions anytime, and we're going to dive right in. And my first question is to Jendi. And can you tell us a little bit about your role as the head of customer experience in Southern California Edison, and why is customer experience such a significant area for SCE?
Sure. So under the CX umbrella at SCE, right now we have marketing communications, customer analytics and insights, our voice of customer program. We also have journey mapping and other design tools, and then as well ownership of SCE.com. And I would say, so I've been with SCE for a year, and coming from a background of customer experience, mostly in telecom, I can say we still have a long ways to go, and we're making a lot of good progress. But I think what's happening now is folks are seeing that there's a risk to not paying attention to customer experience. At a basic level, customers just they have more of a voice than they had before. There are different ways, a lot of ways for them to express their dissatisfaction. And that can hurt our reputation, our partnerships with other customers and regulators. I think customers also have more choice than they had before. So if they're not satisfied with the service we're providing, they will advocate for alternative solutions, and that poses a threat to our business model. And then lastly, I think, and this is the most important, in California, we have really aggressive and ambitious clean energy goals. And that's going to require strong partnership with our customers to get there. We're going to be asking our customers to do things that they might not even have thought of. And so if they don't trust us and we're not meeting their needs now, they're not going to be along for that ride with us. And so I think that's really where we're starting to realize customer experience is a critical piece of our pathway moving forward.
Well, I'm so glad that you mentioned the connection between customer experience and the clean energy transition. And I want to come back to that and touch on that quite a bit more during our conversation. That is certainly something Zpryme is analyzing and has done quite a bit of research around. So more to come on that portion of the conversation. But I also want to pick up very briefly on a point that you just made. You mentioned that you've been with SCE for just about a year now. and that you came from the telecom industry. And so often in the utility industry, we look longingly at customer experience programs in telecoms, retail, banking, entertainment, and say, oh man, if we could only be there. But oftentimes we also say, oh, well, you know, there is the utility X, Y, and Z, and some portion of the country is doing it really well. And quite often I hear that, oh, we want to emulate what Edison is doing. So I think it's very refreshing and humble and honest to hear that you say, hey, you still have progress to make as well. And that I think can be inspiring to a lot of utilities that say, hey, we all have work that we want to do to make sure that we're more customer centric. I'm not sure there was a question there, but if you want to just respond to that at all, or just say, hey, yes, we're still working.
Yeah, I think in general, what I'm seeing is I come from the cellular industry specifically, and their customer experience as of many, many years ago was the way that we do our business, right? I mean, it's just part of our DNA. And I think that's not the case with utilities. That's switching now. And so I think even though we might do a pretty decent job, I think we have to start thinking of ourselves not as a utility, but as a service provider that's actually in competition in a way with Amazon and other service providers, because customers' expectations are being shaped by those companies, not by utility companies. So I think it's just a shift in mindset. And again, with thinking about the risks that we have now, if we don't focus on this, I think that's how we're able to start making that shift.
Well, that is a great driver. And speaking of that shift in mindset that Jendi just mentioned, from your perspective, looking at the industry, how has customer experience evolved for utilities in the last 5 years? And what is driving this increased focus for the industry?
Well, Chris, I think that Jendi hit upon a number of different things. It's a little different when you are a utility, which essentially we're natural monopolies, right? For the longest time. And when your primary business is to supply energy or water services, customer experience is really not something that you consider. The last 5 years, that's changed because what utilities are recognizing is that we need our customers. We need them to conserve. We need them to accept the use of alternative sources of energy and water. We need them to pay their bills. And because of that need, we're really focusing now in terms of how to make customers feel like they're needed and they are heard. I think Jendi really hit it on the mark in terms of hitting different clean energy goals that we have in California that are probably some of the most progressive in the nation. We have the expectations out of our customers in general that I have a smart refrigerator. I mean, I don't personally, but they might have a smart refrigerator. Who knew your refrigerator could tell you in the grocery store that you needed to pick up eggs? They have that in their everyday experience. And so they expect, it's like, well, that in every facet of their life. Why can't we do that with something as basic as utility service? So I think there's that expectation from the client or from the customer side, but there's also the fact that technology has really advanced and utilities are paying more attention to try to adopt those technologies. And as you know, adoption of a technology at a utility is very, very slow. I think most of them are still 3G. We might have some 4G, but it's very, very slow. And that does hamper some of that customer experience that we need to progress on.
Great points. And it reminds me a little bit of where we are going as an industry and where we can go. I recall, anytime somebody goes into a meeting at a utility, the first thing to kick that meeting off is a safety presentation. And here are the exits. Here's what we do in the case of an emergency. Safety and reliability course through the veins of utilities. And that is to the great benefit of the industry. And we work in a dangerous industry. So many folks are putting their lives on the line when they're out there in the field. So that emphasis on safety is so critical. But a few years ago, a colleague in customer experience at another California utility, San Diego Gas and Electric, talked about the idea of what if, in addition to our safety discussion, we also kick off every meeting with, hey, how is this going to focus on the customer as well? Because customer experience isn't just the frontline customer service representative professionals call to duty. It is pervasive across the company. And that's the kind of mindset that we need to be shifting towards. And so I'm so glad both of you picked up on that and put it in that sort of forward-looking perspective. And as we look forward, I think we also have to acknowledge where we are right now. And where we are right now is still very much in the midst of a COVID-19 pandemic. And that has provided a great deal of challenge and tragedy for our country. So, Ann, I'm going to come right back to you. Knowing COVID-19 is a challenge in and of itself, how has that made customer engagement more difficult and simultaneously more important during compounding events like hurricanes, like fires, and your more run-of-the-mill outages that utilities sometimes have to deal with?
Well, Chris, I think there's a number of points there. First, I think you have to recognize and commend that the utilities have always had a communications plan when it comes to emergencies in place. Whether it's a hurricane, whether it's a fire, whether it's a power outage or that, they've always had that, and they have been very good at being able to communicate that information. The challenge that we have with COVID is that everything is being communicated to us via all the different social media channels, right? With the television, the radio, your telephone, Twitter, you name the channel, there's something out there. And we are being so overwhelmed with information that I think that the utilities are thinking very carefully that the information that they share needs to be very intentional and needs to be very deliberate. So if you're not sharing information that's of a crisis nature, it needs to be packaged in sort of bite-sized pieces. Because let's face it, everybody, their attention span with all this messaging coming at them is really short. That's why you have TikTok. That's why you have 15-second little blurbs to keep us entertained, because that's about all our brain can take right now with everything that's inundating us. So I do think that is something that the utilities are recognizing, and they're getting that. So I commend them for that, because I think that their communication plans under emergency situations have kicked in, and they're doing a phenomenal job that way.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned TikTok, and I think that we could delve into what platforms, what technologies should we be using as an industry, regardless of whether it's an emergency or just an announcement about a new customer program, announcement about billing, announcement just about regular customer engagement. I think that's critical. But we do live in this hyper information economy and an attention economy, and so breaking through that noise with valuable information is so critical. Jendi, I want to bring you into this discussion of response during a crisis, because that has been really one of the hallmarks of 2020, and something that Southern California Edison worked very hard to do just a couple months ago during a really devastating heat wave, and there were fires throughout parts of California. In the backdrop, COVID-19 was still happening at a lower level at that point. But what are some of the key steps SCE took to support customers through the pandemic at the start, the heat wave and the fires this year?
Yeah, I think the pandemic was a really, at least the first couple of months, a really interesting example of what I think SCE is capable of in terms of delivering a good customer experience. To Anne's point, I think she was spot on with how we approach communications. We did a little less of the "we're all in this together" generic messaging, and got much more direct with, "this is what we know you need, and this is how you can access it. This is what we can do to help you. Here's how to get there." And there were a couple of things beyond that we did. We used voice of customer data and our customer feedback to really understand what our customers needed, which is something that we're doing more of. But I think this was a good example of how across the entire organization, everyone was listening. And that allowed us to work together and make some really specific changes, the things that mattered most to customers, in a very short amount of time. Usually things, are a little slow, and it can take weeks or months to implement a change. We did things in a matter of days that normally would have taken weeks. And things like changing when we do any kind of maintenance outages, taking into account that folks are working from home, kids are schooling from home. So, consolidating the amount of maintenance outages we needed to do, doing them at night instead of during the day. We made our programs or our processes to be able to access financial assistance much more streamlined and quick for our customers. So we made a lot of changes that really resonated with our customers. And as a result, we saw our customer satisfaction scores go up. We also saw our trust. We do a trust measurement. Trust scores went up 10 percentage points, which is the highest increase that we'd seen since we've been measuring this. So it really made a difference. And I listened to lots of customer calls, and just the thanks that we got during that time. And still, now we've stabilized a little bit with how we're supporting our customers. But at the beginning, customers were just so grateful. And I think that was a good way to put trust in the trust bank, so that when we got to a few weeks ago, the heat waves, where we needed to ask our customers to do something for us, we got a really good response for them, and we were able to avoid doing rotating outages by engaging with our customers and having them reduce their usage. So I think that's just all of that together for me is a really good example. If we build the trust with our customers, when we need them, they're a good partner to us as well.
What a great perspective on that. And I want to bring Anne in on that point that you just made, because while Anne, you study the industry, you look at what's happening across the country, you're an Edison customer. So I know that when we talked earlier, you were very effusive in your praise of,
Right.
of what was happening. So maybe
Right.
you want to expand on that.
I think we know, in living in California, when it's wildfire season, we know what happens when there are massive heat waves. And I would say that people were prepared. They got the notices. They said, okay, we might have rolling brownouts. If you don't want to have a rolling brownout, please help us conserve. People responded to it. And it's because we know if we do our part, we're not going to get that that power outage, And I think that there was tremendous communication on it all over the place, well in advance of the actual occurrence, which I think helps, because then it allows customers to prepare and know what they want to do and where they want to be. So yes, I do appreciate those notices. I remember the years when we didn't have those notices and it would just happen, and I'm like, okay, this is not convenient. This is not good. So I can see a massive difference in that. I've been very fortunate that we haven't had rolling brownouts exactly where I live, but but I want to do my part to make sure that we don't. So I am grateful for that communication. And I think Jendi is correct. It's not just SoCal Edison with respect to trust and credibility. I think all utilities in the industry face that. When there is a crisis that happens, you have to rebuild that trust, and the only way to do it is by following through and having credibility. And what you promise to do, you do. So I think that they've made a concerted effort. So I'm very pleased.
Chris, there's one other thing that I'd like to tag on to that I think is
Please.
really relevant. is at the end, when our customers pulled through for us, we also sent thank you notes, particularly to some of the customers, our industrial and corporate customers that really leaned in and made an effort for us. And it was really amazing. We started getting letters from customers thanking them or thanking us for thanking them for doing their part and saying, I really appreciate that you recognize the effort that we put in. And so for me, a big part of customer experience that I'm a fan of is closing the loop with customers. And I think that was a really good example of letting customers know that what they did made a difference and that we appreciate them. It really made a difference.
Well, I think that's a wonderful story, because I think that speaks to the role that customers also play in resiliency, which is this major area of focus for our industry right now, because emergencies are not going away. COVID-19 at some point will diminish, and we will persevere through this. But climate change is this ever-present and increasing danger that will have impacts throughout the country. And you can never say this one storm was caused by climate change, or this one outage was caused by climate change. But it does exacerbate those inflection moments for a utility, and so closing the loop, as you said, is really critical. There is a reservoir that utility customers have of trust and knowledge. Hey, there are acts of God that are going to cause power to go out, but my utility is communicating with me. My utility is working hard to get the power back on, and as long as those two things are true, we're pretty happy. So I think that's kind of the message you're trying to share with us, Jendi. As we could talk about emergencies probably for the rest of the hour, but I do want to move on to some tools of customer experience, how customer experience is evolving with data, with analytics. And this first question on that is for you. What types of data should utilities be trying to analyze to design and maintain a modern customer experience program?
So, Chris, I think that what sums it up right now is that we need to have predictive analytics. Okay. And so you ask, well, what exactly does that mean and what are we predicting? So
Right.
The way I always look at it is, customers want transparency, but more than that, let's look at ourselves as customers and what do we expect? If you look to the retail industry, what do retailers want out of their customers? Well, for sure that sales increase if you know how your customers buy, right? If you can personalize that experience for them, then they're more likely to give you a positive response and come back. Okay. So now if you apply that to the utility industry, what does that mean? Well, what do customers typically want to know? They want to know, how much do I use? How does that compare to when I used it last time? At different times, how do I compare to my neighbors? Am I an average user? Am I a high power user? What ways can I fix that? And it also means that down the line, I think that as information becomes more available, that I think on the energy side, what we're going to go to is potentially hyper personal rates for customers. Individualized, they might be. Now, there's a lot of administrative costs and there's a whole bunch of nuances. And coming from the financial arena, my head hurts thinking about how am I going to do this personalized for each individual and predicting that. But that is a possibility in that side. So you're looking at behaviors, and that from that data, the other part of it is that how can you use that to drive forward certain programs that you might want, right? Do you have an area of people that you can identify who tend to be early adopters of technology or early adopters of things, who like the bright and shiny little tool that's out there? Are they more likely to maybe allow you to house a Tesla charging station in your garage. Those are the customers you want to identify if you're trying to push forward various alternative clean energy type initiatives or solar panels or whatever the case might be. Um, on the water side, they're struggling to catch up. We still have to get AMI into a lot of water utilities to get that kind of information that will allow the water side to really hone down and understand customer usage and really help to shape certain types of behaviors that we need our customers to do. So I think that's really what we're looking at is customer data to get us to where we can start personalizing things for our customers.
And that usage data, that AMI data is foundational. That's the base level. Are there other types of data that you would be looking to integrate into that model, that mix as we develop a personalized rate? For instance, if a customer has signed up for a past program, or potentially how they interact on social media or their billing.
Yes.
What else would you be looking for?
All of that. It would be in terms of, and I think that, some of the programs that Jendi indicated in terms of looking at demographics, in terms of looking at behaviors in that sense, there's a lot more, I think, sort of what we would call retail marketing type data that can be gathered that would help shape. So again, when you're talking about rebate programs or things like that, how do you target the right customers in that fashion and response rates, right? So I can send them an insert in my mail and open it up. I want to know how many people actually respond to that. Where are they responding? What type of campaigns do they respond to? That type of information, again, it's customer data mining is what it comes down to. Mm-hmm.
That's
We're not there
helpful.
yet. We're not there yet.
Oh,
we're getting there. Yeah,
that's okay. It's an iterative process, and it's going to take time.
Right.
And there's a question from the audience that a great question from John, and we're going to touch on that. But a little bit of your answer right there speaks to some of that customer engagement maturity level. So John, we're going to come back to your question because I do think that it's critical as we look to the future. But some of what Ann was just saying there really speaks to where we are now and where we might be headed in a year or 2 years, 5 years.
This is where I think that Jendi's experience coming in from a telecom-based industry into SCE is such a wonderful thing because it gives you different perspectives, right? You spoke earlier about how we look to retail, banking, health, and we're kind of envious at times, like, wow, they're really good at doing this. What can we do? It is that perspective. Again, let's look to other industries and where they've already innovated and see what can apply to us and what can work. They've already kind of stumbled over all the challenges. So let's learn from them. But again, it's understanding how to apply something that's a little foreign in our thinking back into the utility industry and to mine that. And this is a very different area in terms of just more than just mining basic usage. It's really looking at consumptive patterns and customer behavior is what we're looking at.
And one thing I would say, in the last year, since I started with SCE, I've seen a lot of, well, if we have limited funds, right, because we want to use our customers, our ratepayer dollars wisely and be good stewards, right? Are we going to put those funds towards working on the things that are keeping our customers safer? Are we going to work on those customer experience things like, marketing automation, which is a lot of what you're referring to? And when you really look at it, what I've been trying to advocate is they're not two separate things, right? When we think in California, we do a lot of public power shutoffs, safety shutoffs when there are wildfires, right? And so we need to let customer know when that's going to happen. Well, if we have really good information on our customers, we know that if their preference is text messaging instead of social media, or they prefer emails, we can get the right information to the right customers at the right time and keep our customers safer. So I think one good way to look at it is it's not one or the other, customer experience or safety. It's, the two of them work together, and we can keep our customers safer if we understand them, we know their preferences, and we're customizing our engagement and outreach to their preferences.
What a great example that is, because truly, as you have those moments of high wind combined with fire danger, where a power shutoff would be not just appropriate but required, is sending that blanket email to everybody, and knowing that only 14-15% of people are going to open their emails, and that's not the preferred method of communication for X percentage of people or a certain segment of people, that it almost is not effective to do it that way. But if hey, this specific person wants to be contacted in a case like this via text or via a social media message or that email or a phone call, then you're going to have a much better engagement rate, and somebody's not going to be caught surprised when their power required by state law goes out. So that's very effective. Jendi, I want to come right back to you and talk a little bit about data and how SCE is using data to understand your customers better. You just mentioned right information, right time. So how is that translating when it comes to customer satisfaction?
Yeah, I think so. We're using data in a lot of different ways, and a lot of different kinds of data. We still have a very long way to go to get to the state that Anne was describing. But I'd say we're using a lot of our voice of customer data, and we're doing even more of that. We saw in COVID how that had a direct impact. We could see very quickly using text analytics and analytics on our survey responses, what customers needed from us, what they were upset about, and we could turn that directly into action. And then we saw that our customer satisfaction scores went up, and like I said, our trust scores went up by 10 percentage points. Back to our public safety power shutoffs, we realized last year, it became very clear that we provide a lot of support to our customers during the times that we have to shut off their power to keep them safe. And we were using a one-size-fits-all approach, and that was not working. All of our communities are different within Southern California. And so, we might have a low-income area that has very different needs than a farming community that we support. And so we've been using data, both our internal customer data and then external customer data on just the demographics of our customers, so that we can build models to show which different communities with which circuits need which different kind of help, so that our response during those times is much more targeted and customized to the community that we're supporting, instead of a blanket approach. So that's another way that we've seen a much better response from our customers, knowing that we're getting what they need. One community might need toothbrushes and phone chargers during that time, and others, their farming communities, if we shut off their water sources, they're at much bigger risk. So just understanding our customers and delivering what's important to them has made a big difference.
As we, as an industry, work to understand what is important to our customers at any given moment, and it's going to change. That's another thing. It's going to change moment to moment too, what a customer needs. A customer, when they are in the business setting, might have slightly different requirements and have a different customer persona when they walk back in the door, and they're their mom, the dad, the daughter, the son, the grandparent, as they are back in their homes than they are in their professional setting. And that's critical to keep in mind as well as we understand customers. I want to bring a question in from the audience, and I referenced this already, but John asked this great question about what are some ways utilities can assess where they are in their customer engagement maturity level. And the second part of his question is there a customer experience framework that utilities can use? And I'll answer that second part first before I turn it over to our true experts. There are a few customer experience frameworks that can be used, and I will just plug some work that Zpryme has done in the recent past on digital transformation. It is expansive of the entirety of a utility's digital transformation, but it does touch quite a bit on where utilities, a digital transformation maturity model, and where utilities need to go. And customer experience makes up a large component of that maturity model. But there are a handful, and we can link to that maturity model, and there are some others. So now I'll stop and I'll turn it back over to Anne or Jendi. What are some ways that utilities can assess where they are right now and where they need to go?
Well, I think from a general framework, and I know Jendi's got excellent examples from SoCal Edison, but from a general framework, you would look at customer satisfaction surveys. So for example, JD Powers does ratings on the utility industries. That's a great area to determine where you're at. There are some utilities that do this on a very regular basis. I remember, for example, Louisville Water Company annually will come out with customer survey things, and that's what they wanted to be known for, was customer service. And they put a huge focus on that to determine how best to improve that sector, and they would come out and routinely do these type of surveys. I think you can't know where you stand with your customers unless you ask them, and so I do think there's a lot of benefit to that. Jendi, I think from SCE's perspective, you guys have done a lot of work in this area.
Yeah, I would agree that the customer's opinion is the most important. Another complementary way just to give a gauge and understand where you are, we've used a maturity model that was we worked with a consulting firm that had more of a generic utility maturity model that had, several different dimensions, customer experience strategy being one of them, data and analytics another. And, for each of the levels of maturity, there was a description of, if you're here, this is what it would look like, right? And it can go from, your basic, you don't have any way of measuring your customer experience, to, you understand your customer, you have a methodical way of constantly getting feedback and distributing it to the entire organization. So there are maturity model frameworks out there. And then, within SCE, we've built our own for different groups, right? Just to see, if I want to take, my team from here to here in terms of customer experience, I can build a framework that shows, where we are today and what it might look like to get to better levels of maturity. And it just gives you kind of that north of where you're needing to go, and make sure that the initiatives that you're putting in place are getting you to those levels. But yes, I agree that the customer perspective, that maturity model needs to come from what's going to meet the customer's needs, but that just kind of helps with the enablers that get you there.
Thank you both for those great answers on that. And I did just post in the chat our digital maturity curve, but as Anne said, lots of other resources out there to help in this process, and we all have a stake in it. And so Zpryme's not the only one that does good work in this experience. So I strongly encourage you to avail yourself of as many different resources as possible. As we look to the future of customer experience, this is a question that I'd like both of you to take a look at. Zpryme research shows that customer satisfaction rises in correlation with programmatic engagement, and by that, of course, I mean if there is an electric vehicle program, or there is a home energy audit program, or dozens of other examples of this. Energy efficiency comes to mind. What steps should utilities be taking to ensure that they are providing the types of services that customers really want? And Jendi, maybe you'll take the first crack at that.
Yeah, I think a couple things come to mind. The first is co-design. We shouldn't be building programs and services based on what we think and, in a bubble. We should know before we start what problems we're trying to solve for our customers and what they need. And then we should design with them and get feedback along the way so that when we get to the end and we're actually delivering something, that, you know, we're meeting their expectations. And then the other thing that comes to mind is education, I think is so important, and figuring out how to get customers engaged all the time. There's so much information out there that I think can be really confusing for customers. So if we can give our customers what they need to know in a simple way so that we're the go-to source for some of these things, I think that goes a long way.
Oh, that is a great aspirational goal. And I think it's a pretty attainable goal, because right now, customers, our research does find that when it comes to energy usage and water usage, utilities are the expert resource. And so taking advantage of that market position with the customer and with that customer mindset now in the next few years is going to be critical. Otherwise, as Jendi, as you had mentioned at the top of the program, there is the potential for some disintermediation from the Googles and the Amazons and you know, companies yet to come. So, Anne, I'd really appreciate your thoughts on this. What steps should utilities be taking to ensure they're providing the top quality services and programs customers want?
You know, I think that's interesting what Jendi said, because it's very much, as a consultant, it's the same sort of framework and mindset. I can come up with a million different types of solutions. It's whether or not my clients are going to buy it. Is it the right solution for what they need? And this is the same sort of thing. What do the customers need? And so I think that what we're looking at here is, I think that there's a lot to do with respect to, again, communicating a level of credibility and trust out to our customers, and so that they are more likely to support you in what you need. I think that I remember when I was at Costco a couple of years back, and people were walking out the door with these huge pallets of all these things. And I was like, oh, what's everybody buying? Well, SE had put out a big energy efficient push to change out all our lights. And so at the time, those particular lights were rather expensive to buy if you wanted to do that. But they had subsidized a program, and they were like 99 cents each or something like this. And, you know, you had to buy a dozen of them. But still, I'm sitting here and I looked at my husband and go get a pallet thing. We're going to go buy a whole bunch of lights, because it was a great deal and it was an incredible way to do it. Those are the type of things that people want, right? As a consumer, I'm like, I would love to be supportive and do cutting edge things and do all these things, but I just need a little bit of a financial incentive to do things like that. And that's what you need to go look. It's like when solar panels first came out, I wanted to do solar so bad as a residential homeowner. I thought solar was the greatest idea. You're living in California, you get sunshine a lot. What a great thing to do. Just a little bit too expensive to do that. And then when they had the incentives, and I go, I'm on it. And so, of course, I'm grandfathered in with the net metering. But the point is that they developed programs to listen to how to encourage these uses. That's what they should be doing. And I totally agree with Jendi, is that on the water side, they need to be doing that. On the energy side, they need to be doing that. You know, are rebates still working with respect to energy efficient appliances? Well, I sure as heck applied when I had to replace my washer, dryer, and refrigerator. So yes, those things happen. The same thing with, you know, smart irrigation meters, all of that. I think that those are the things that they really need to be touching and figuring out. If I want my customers to be doing and evoking certain behaviors, what is it going to take to do that? And what forms of rebates or programs or incentives do I need to offer to make this happen?
And I think, Anne, to piggyback on that, also, this goes back to really understanding our customers, because they're not all the same, and creating solutions for different segments of customers and what's important for them.
Well, I'm so glad that both of you touched on this, because this brings us back to a point that Jendi made earlier, and this is as good a time as any to pick up on it. we know that climate change is out there, that there is that, and that we have some significant agency in this. California and 5 other states and Puerto Rico and DC have mandates in their law right now that says we will be decarbonized by some date in the next 30 years. It varies state to state and territory and city. And then there are an additional 20 plus states and hundreds of cities around the country that have some degree of goal setting that speaks to this. But none of this is possible simply by just putting more solar panels on roofs or having utility scale solar or putting wind turbines on and offshore. This is going to be a challenge that requires not just customer participation, but customer enthusiasm for this. And you mentioned energy efficiency, the lights program, the rebates. But what are the two of you thinking about when it comes to engaging customers around this challenge of our time, this clean energy transition challenge of our time? And it's a tough question. So I'm going to put Jendi, I'm going to put you on the spot on this one first. But what are some of those goals?
I think this goes back to when I talked about partnership. I think, the biggest goal that we have right now, or what we must do, is start to really partner with our customers and not see them, for the longest time in the utility industry, they were ratepayers, right? And now we just need to see our customers as partners, knowing that the solutions that we're working towards, they have to be part of that, and they have to be in it from the beginning with us as we go down the pathway. So, and again, it comes back to building trust with customers and delivering on their basic needs now, so that they realize that, when we ask for something or we suggest something, that, they should listen.
And any additional thoughts on the connection between clean energy transition and customer experience?
Well, I think there's a couple of things there. I think Jendi hit upon that I totally agree with. But there's also another aspect. First off, our overall demographics in society have changed a bit more, right? We're far more conscious about climate change and the impacts of that. But at the same time, as Jendi has pointed out, we do have areas where, let's face it, the provision of basic services is first and foremost. If we're not delivering on that, then it doesn't matter what kind of goals we're going for, because customers are not going to care. We are not giving them and meeting their basic level of service that they are paying for and requesting. So I do think that there's that aspect, that if you need to be consistent, you need to deliver on that. And when you do that, then in a consistent fashion, and when they have positive experiences with you via customer service, or how they pay their bills, or their interactions with the line workers or whatever, then you can ask them to partner with you on some of these more what they would consider new, greener type programs, type of things, which are all good for the environment. Not that they're not that the customer is not for that. But again, I think it's about, you have to make sure you're following through on the basics first before you can ask for more.
Well, and that's such a great point, and it opens up the potential of a win-win-win, and that those 3 wins are: 1, it's good for the environment; 2, it has the potential impact of bringing more affordable energy to the grid, so the customer could save money, the utility can save money, and then that third win is for the level of engagement that you're going to create between yourself as a utility and that customer, cementing that brand awareness, that bond, that level of participation and collaboration in this project. Time is just flying by, and we've got a few more questions and some great questions. I'm probably talking too much, so excuse me, but we've got some great questions from the audience, and I want to get to those. And one of those questions from Jesse speaks to an idea of digital technology. And our world is transforming so quickly, and it's fun. But what are some of those digital technologies that utilities can and should be using to make sure that we're providing the best customer service? And then specifically, Jesse asked about voice activated systems, your Alexa Fit, or I don't want to say things too loudly in case I set them off in my own home, but your various home devices that you can be talking to talk, to create that frictionless experience. So, Jendi, what digital technologies should we be using as utilities and as customers?
Yeah, I think that's a good point about Alexa. We actually piloted some things, and we're going down that path so that customers can interact with us in the ways that they're used to now interacting with lots of other service providers. I would say, though, that being realistic about where we are, we need to be thinking that way and working towards that way. But back to Anne's point is getting some of the basics right. And I think having things like a voice of customer platform and ways to quickly analyze, customer sentiment and feedback and take action on that. We still have a ways to go to get that process going well, and then being able to close the loop with the customers, making sure that every customer is taken care of. I think there's a long way to go there, and we need to focus on that first, but we always need to be looking forward. So I think some of those other technologies we are starting to explore, and we're working towards that. And then, also thinking about how our customers want to engage with us. How many of our customers want to engage through Alexa, understanding that, but how many just want a really solid web experience and just be able to do things without having to interact with us at all. And I think we're seeing that's where a lot of our customers are. And so, delivering on a digital experience and having really good digital platforms, I think is really key.
Well, totally agree. Yeah. Totally agree. And I think that's a shout out to the IT people out there, is that we really need to have a flexible and agile IT environment, preferably cloud-based, because we just can't get big enough servers to do everything that we need to do. But I think that really drives a lot of what we do, not just from a customer experience perspective, but also just in terms of the operational aspects of a utility. It's funny that Jesse talked about voiceover, because that's really an area I think that has been long neglected. I think we're going to hopefully move to more using chatbots and things like that. But the customer call center and the voiceovers, I think it's an area that can really be modernized, but it is going to take some time, because there's a lot of things to invest at a utility, and it needs to get some level of prioritization in there as well. So yes, we're getting there, but it is a slow process. I'm sorry, Chris, you were going to say?
No,
I cut you off. Yeah.
Well, good, please. I think that one of those key points that both of you brought up is the idea that there's always going to be new technology, and adopting that new technology is important, but doing the basics is perhaps even more important. Just having that digital experience, that mobile experience locked up and done right is so critical to the customer. And oh, by the way, there are still customers out there that prefer the analog experience, and understanding the customer and having the data around that preference is critical to provide them the services that they need as well. As we come to the end of this conversation, I'm going to, there's a great multi-part question from Ed in the chat. And that's kind of also lead into overall modernization efforts, which is what I want to finalize our discussion on today. And so Ed touches on the importance of data to make a foundational communication plan, but he asks, are there other levers that customer experience professionals can take? And I want you to think about that question, Ed's question, in the context of what else should we be doing to modernize our utility customer experience over the next decade? That's a big ask, but Anne, I'd love you to put your take out the crystal ball and say what should we be doing?
I think that one of the difficulties that the utilities face is that we will always have a segment of the population that prefers to work and deal with a real human being, right? So whether we're paying a bill or something like that. But I think that you're probably going to look at maybe 95 to 98% of the customer base is going to want to do things digitally, whether, as Jenny pointed out, it's your web portal experience, being able to pay your bill, schedule an appointment easily on a website that you can get to and navigate and understand. That's a big one. Whether you do it via the phone through chatbots, I think there's a lot of those things that are going to be happening. I think that there are going to be changes within call centers that we need to be looking at, and that will be happening over time. I think that all of that, though, is predicated upon getting the right systems in place. We're seeing ads already for 5G, and I'm like, great. But then you have to look at the big map of the nation to see actually where 5G is available. And it's not widely available. But it's those sort of things. Utilities cannot be lagging my grandmother's technology update. If she is using a smartphone and can pay bills on the phone, the utility can't be that far behind. We need to get more modernized and catch up. And not to say that we need to be leading edge or bleeding edge in these areas, but we need to be moving faster towards that because our customers demand it. They expect it. And if you think about it, aside from wearing your utility hat, you expect it as a consumer. In your own household, what do you expect and go through? That's what you have to take back in, and we need to sort of make that a priority.
Well,
Jendi?
Yeah, Jendi, picking up on what Anne said, where are we headed? Where should we be headed in the next 10 years?
I think there's one key thing that I'm thinking about that doesn't necessarily even have to do with data. It's modernizing the way that we're thinking about our customers from, again, a history of their ratepayers to now making sure our customers understand that we appreciate them, that we understand the value that they give to us, that we recognize, their needs and expectations, and that we're letting them know that. Because I think when you think about normal, other types of non-monopolies, right? That's the key thing. When I think about customer loyalty, it's making sure customers know that we appreciate them, that we're meeting their needs, we know what they want, and we're delivering on that. And I think just changing that mindset of we need our customers just as much as they need us.
What a great way to finish this fantastic conversation. Jendi, Anne, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your expertise with us today.
Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome. Thank you, Chris. Thanks, Jendi.
And at Zpryme, we are so grateful to both Southern California Edison and Black & Veatch Management Consulting for their work in this space and their expertise in customer experience. We're also incredibly grateful to you as our audience. Thank you for your participation, your great questions. There's so much more to come on customer experience, and Zpryme will be a part of that every step of the way. Zpryme Now is produced by my colleague Chris Holt. Big thanks to Chris, and from everybody at Zpryme. Stay safe, happy Halloween, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on another webinar. Thank you. Have a great day.